I almost think that it's a type of movie that I should like more, but it's almost like we're too cynical to like it. Hello and welcome to the Brothers Random Show. My name is Travis,
I'm Michael.
and we are two ordinary brothers discussing extraordinary ideas and some random shit. Michael, why are we here?
Today we're talking about If. The film just came out, directed by John Krasinski, also starring John Krasinski and Ryan Reynolds.
What if I told you imaginary friends are real? When their kids grow up, they're forgotten.
Are any of them scary?
Worse, desperate.
Question, why did these kids forget about us in the first place?
Last week, I just started falling apart.
You're sucking the oxygen out of the room.
Honestly, Doc, if this is how it's going to be, I'm just going to wheel myself back and plug in.
Yeah, we both took our kids. It's a family feature, I would say. What are your first impressions of it before we get
My
into
kids
spoilers?
enjoyed it. I liked it. I mean, it was okay. And it had some fun, kid-friendly fun and stuff. It was very imaginative and things like that. It was kind of slow, but
in today's day
like
and age, it's kind of refreshing sometimes to just kind of
Right.
take it easy through a movie. It didn't distract my kid. I have an 8-year-old that just kind of soak up the whole thing. There were, in the slower moments, I could tell that she was getting kind of squirmy. But once I guess we should say it's about a girl who starts seeing other people's imaginary friends. Before we really, but as soon as the imaginary friends started popping up, she was all in. So
it took a little bit to get there.
Yeah,
they were trying to build up and let you know who this person was. And obviously she had a parent that had passed away, and it kind of it had to set that up a little bit before you started seeing these imaginary friends. Which it just took a little bit, and then once you get into that, it's kind of fun and cute and yeah. So
I was a little disappointed because of most movies with Ryan Reynolds are very, very funny. And this didn't have, like, almost every joke that the trailer has is the only jokes in the movie.
Right.
So, I mean, there were a couple of laugh jokes, but it was jokes that it's almost like the people who put together the trailer were kind of like, oh, hey, we need to put in the only jokes that the movie has, just so it'll intrigue people to come to it. It's not doing too well, and the reviews aren't great. So, I don't know. But for overall, it's John Krasinski. I want to support the guy, because I like his stuff. I like what he's done. I mean, The Office is hilarious, and then the Quiet Place movies are really great. And we're supposed to be getting like a prequel to those coming out in the next little while. But I mean, I just want to support the guy because he's very, he's just a likable guy, and the same goes for Ryan Reynolds. I like what Ryan Reynolds does. I do have to admit that, like, Ryan Reynolds movies are like hit or miss for me. Like, he'll do something really, really great, and then he'll do something that's not so great. Like, what was the Adam Project? I thought that movie was like, okay, it had its moments of like being funny, but I was just like, it's kind of like a cheeseburger that you you know, it has no, it like you enjoy it while you're eating it, but it's got no nutritional value. It's like
Well, because
terrible for you.
I watched Adam Project, but I can't even remember
Anything about it,
anything
right?
about
It's
it.
such a forgettable movie. It's like, okay, he's a kid and he's like, it was just,
But right around that time, he did Free Guy, and I loved
yeah,
Free Guy.
Free Guy was pretty
So
funny.
kind of
Yeah.
just the difference,
Yeah, it's hit or miss. Like the guy does good stuff, but it's just hard to like he does so much stuff that you a lot of the stuff is bad.
Well,
So it's not always, I guess you can't hit him out of the park all, you know, all the time. So
every
should
time, yeah,
should we get into spoilers? This is going to be a short
Pre-
one anyway, so
yeah, pretty quickly. Yeah, we can get into spoilers.
okay. Spoilers now. I called it. The twist at the end is very, you can see coming. Because Ryan Reynolds ends up being the main girl's
Imaginary friend.
imaginary friend.
Yeah.
So it's funny because all through it, so he's trying to he's dressed down at the beginning. He's just got suspenders and a shirt and pants, and then every scene that you see him next, there's something added to him. Like he's got
His
these
outfit.
He's got these
Yeah.
shoes with spats on them, and then he starts getting, and he's supposed to be this clown that the girl, when she was younger, had created as imaginary friend. So, I mean, the critics hated it. It's got 49% on Rotten Tomatoes. Audiences liked it more. It's a little too over sentimental, I guess would be the best way to put it. Although I'm holding my 8-year-old through it and she's like bawling. So it did affect her. Like I was saying, it's very over sentimental. It's a little too much to like people are too cynical in this time, I think, to like a movie like this.
Yeah.
Because it is meant to be whimsical. The jokes, like we said before, there aren't that many jokes. It really needed more funny, I thought.
Yeah.
To
I was
really
feeling that too. Some of the humor was just a little bit, they were trying for this slapstick humor
Mhm.
that probably works for little kids a little bit, maybe. Like the the big purple one kept
Yeah.
falling down and
Yeah.
stuff, and it was, I mean, maybe little kids would find that kind of funny, but us adults were kind of just like
Well, and
and
it was hard to tell whether it was meant for little kids or meant for adults because there's these really serious moments in it. It's almost like I felt like it would have done better as an 80s children's movie because the 80s children's movies always had this element of seriousness to them. Whereas like kind of teaching a life lesson, you know, because there's a lot of death in this, a lot of illness in this. She spends a lot of time in the hospital.
yeah.
So there's this element of loss to this movie that is almost too serious for a kids movie because we don't get a lot of serious kids movies anymore. A movie called I remember came out in the early 2000s called The Bridge to Terabithia. It was
Oh, yeah.
extremely, like, it was meant for kids, but it was extremely heavy. Like it's
It was a
about a
heavy
death of a friend.
Yep.
And do you remember My Girl that came out like
Yeah, My Girl.
that came out in the early 90s?
Was that
I
made
think.
for kids though? That was
I
kind
think
of
it was.
more
Maybe.
for adults, I would think.
Yeah.
Even though we watched it as kids.
Yeah, it was. I would say it was kind of still meant for kids because it had a lot of slapstick moments like this. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, so this movie, I think this movie, its heart is in the right place, but its execution isn't as like. It just needed more funny moments and maybe a little less serious moments. I don't know. It's okay for kids to see serious stuff. With like the animated films nowadays, they don't have serious moments.
Beauty and the
Like,
Beast had serious moments.
Yeah, but that you
Like,
again, that's like 91 is when that movie
but that's what
came
I'm
out,
saying.
so.
Beauty and the Beast had serious moments.
Yeah,
And it seems like we're seeing less of that
in children's films.
in
So
children's films.
That's almost why it almost felt like that's why this movie was out of place. Because it is trying to have those serious moments, but it's almost too serious. And I could hear people kind of sniffling through in the back behind me and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't know. I guess it would be considered a family film more than a kid's film, because there's like stuff in there for the adults as well. But it just wasn't very good. It had a couple of good things in it. I found myself getting teary eyed. When the grandma starts dancing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a really beautiful scene, and
walk us through like what happened there. Yeah.
Well, so the whole point to the movie is that the father,
the thesis of the movie
is to kind of find your inner child again. And as adults, we don't do that enough, and I'm probably the worst about it. But what happens is these imaginary friends are disappearing from the lives of the people who came up with them. And then when they connect to their childhood again, it brings the imaginary friends it brightens them, and it makes them their full self. And the grandmother
throughout the movie, the girl keeps saying, "I'm not a kid anymore. I'm not a kid anymore." Right. So she's grown up. Yeah. And so she lost her imaginary friend. She lost that child, Well,
she also lost her mother. Nothing makes you grow up more than death in your family.
Yeah.
I would say.
For reals.
You
But then the grandma, sorry, finish.
Well, and the grandma used to be a dancer, and her imaginary friend was this ballerina type cartoon character. And so there's this moment in the movie where the little girl's hiding and it plays a familiar tune, and the grandmother's kind of cleaning up the dishes, and she kind of like just starts dancing. And it's a really beautiful, and it's meant to be really beautiful and sentimental, and then the imaginary friends hiding with little girl, and it brightens her up and that sort of thing. And I almost think that it's a type of movie that I should like more, but it's almost like we're too cynical to like it.
Maybe, and maybe that's the point
of the movie.
Everybody's gotten so cynical and so wrapped up in day-to-day lives and everything else. Because I thought one of the favorite parts that I loved was them walking through all the different characters throughout the film, and which was theirs, which imaginary friend was theirs.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just super cute to go through the nurse,
all the secondary characters that had lines,
all the secondary characters they had throughout.
That was beautiful. I really did like that part of the movie. So what makes this movie less? Is it because it's overtly sent? So it's got these moments in it, like you said, like that one where it goes through and it shows all the secondary characters, imaginary friends, kind of reappearing to them, having these childlike moments where they reappear. I'm just wondering, what would make us like this movie more? I liked it, but it's not going to be a movie that I'm going to revisit probably. Is it because is it too heavy? Is it too heavy of a movie? It just needed a little bit more lightness to it.
Possibly, little more laughter, maybe. I think we could have seen more of the friend that had the broken leg and the broken hip and the broken arm that she meets in the hospital. I think that I would have loved to see more of that character, you know, being funny.
Yeah.
It seemed like they were introducing a little bit of a comical relief with him. But then never, and then you just don't see him that much.
Yeah.
Like he's kind of there, but kind of not. Probably could have done a little bit better that way. A little bit more comical relief. The imaginary friend that was invisible that kept
Yeah. That was a running gag in the movie.
Was kind of and it was kind of just, it's like, all right, how many times are you going to be tripping over Keith?
Yeah, Keith, the imaginary
like
friend that's invisible.
Long can that going for?
He's an invisible character.
invisible
like double
character.
invisible. It's funny, and everybody does a good job in it. Just I don't.
My kids loved it. Yeah,
my kids liked it too. Yeah,
yeah. It was,
you know,
and they were there for it. There were a few times where their attention span wasn't keeping up with it, but for the most part, after we left, they were super excited. They were just like, yeah, we loved it. So
well, and okay, so you and I always get on these subjects of the woke. It's refreshing to see a movie that doesn't have any woke in it.
Yeah, and I support that. And so it's not that I thought that this, I didn't know if it was going to have any or not, but I wanted to support going and seeing it.
Well, and all they would have had to do to put any woke in it is like have a character that had a they them pronoun or something like that. It's like, do we really need to do this?
Yeah, so, or a non-binary care or something. I mean, the opportunity was there. They could have.
Yeah.
You know, and my hat's off to John Krasinski.
For not doing it. It's for kind of just going, this is a family movie. We're just going to tell a story. We're just going to make it simple. We're not going to put any of this political bullshit in it. And that I found very refreshing, because there's just way too much shit that I watch now. And I'm just like, okay, this is in it. Okay, I'm out.
Yeah.
You know, Star Wars is pumping it into Star Wars and all their shows and everything. The man can never be stronger than the woman. I'm just so sick of it. So it was just nice seeing that it wasn't that.
Moving on.
Moving on. Any final thoughts on that?
On If, I just it was kind of a reminder to not take life so seriously. I think is what it was, just like, hey, remember that. And it kind of opened with that, with Krasinski. He's in the hospital and he's like joking around.
Yeah.
You know, makes a joke, dancing with his what do you call him, with the bag and the IV, his IV.
Yeah.
And he's making a joke of it with his daughter.
And everybody wants him to be serious. The nurse wants him to be serious. The daughter wants him to be serious. They're all like rolling their eyes. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of
just like, we do what we can. He's just like, you know, sometimes it's good to be serious, but sometimes it's good to try to make light of things. Or I try. Is that what he said? I think he says, I try to make it, you know, funny. And he was always kind of playing these little pranks when she came in and he's got the sheets all tied up out the window. He's like, I finally got out of here.
What do you think was wrong with him? Like maybe a heart murmur of some kind that they had to actually have a surgery?
Heart surgery. Must be pretty serious if they had him in the hospital for like 2 days before the surgery, 3 days before the surgery. That might be. It's like, oh, okay, that's probably pretty serious.
Well, it's just funny that they never mention what it actually is. They just kind of jokingly referred to it as a broken heart.
It's a broken heart.
Yeah.
And then they also don't say what the mother passed away from. Do they? I don't
You
think they.
assume it's cancer because she's lost her hair towards the end of the
Oh,
videos. So
oh,
she's got like a band over her head and
oh, yeah. Gotcha. Gotcha.
but I mean it's a very vague when it comes to all that kind of stuff because its focus is on the imaginative,
Yeah.
which is why like the I thought it was kind of clever with the retirement home for the imaginary friends, and they're all like in they're all in like a therapy,
Yeah.
which I thought was kind of a funny and clever scene. There's a ton of voice like famous people who were
Voice
doing
actors. Yeah.
the voices of them.
Let me ask you this, because my kids were leaving, and my boy's just like, "Hey, Dad, who's the bad guy?" And I was like, "There was no bad guy in this," and that's okay. It was just they were just solving a problem, and but at the same time, it makes me wonder if they should have had a bad guy. Like if
I
that might
think
have been
that might have been what made it better.
what it was missing.
So here's an interesting thought. So I recently watched Encanto, Disney's Encanto again, and it's a super fun, clever Disney movie. It came out right during COVID, I believe. And so all the songs are really pleasant and funny and all that kind of stuff. But I also noticed the same thing. There's not a villain in that movie. I think with a good villain, you elevate a story. You know, that's why Gladiator's so good, because Commodus is such a great villain. That's why Beauty and the Beast is so great, is because Gaston is a great villain.
Yeah. I
You
don't
take a
know. It's interesting though that, yeah, because you mentioned Encanto, there's not really a villain. It's a problem that she's just solving, right?
yeah.
It's not really, there's not really a villain. Um uh
And you
and
don't I guess you don't need a villain in all of your movies, but
mhm,
I think like a good foible to the hero is a good story. That makes for like Batman's got the Joker, you know.
yeah.
So it's almost like if there had been a villain in it and they had kind of centered around good versus evil or something like something along those lines, maybe that's not the story they were trying to tell, but maybe that would have put it over the it's okay category, right?
I don't know, like maybe a fear, like imaginary friends are supposed to, bring us kind of joy and happiness.
Mm-hmm.
But if you give your imagination to fear, what
Mm-hmm.
what comes up? Like the fear of loss, the fear of all these
Yeah.
things. Like I don't know if they could have kind of put that in there and made fear the enemy kind of thing. I don't know. It did. And in fact, like it it didn't have a lot of stakes, right? There's just these
Yeah,
imaginary
you're
friends. They're trying to find people to attach to, um because if they don't, then what, they disappear. Like
mhm.
it kind of it didn't.
Well, and that's maybe that's you're right. There weren't really stakes.
It
I
was
mean,
kind of just
she's
her, and she's like, I'll help you, and let's
yeah.
do this, and we'll try to figure it out. It it was, it still was okay, like, but I think if they could have made it a little, had the serious stuff but also a little bit more funny, um and a little better, not slapstick, but a little better humor in the writing, possibly,
Mhm.
that, and then maybe if the stakes had been just a little bit, like, up the ante just a little bit on the stakes,
Yeah.
possibly, then it might have been,
Armchair
armchair
quarterback. Yeah.
quarterbacks. We could sit and, yeah, you should have done this, you should have done that.
Well, but yeah, I do think a good villain elevates a story. So that's, I mean, that's, the better stories out there, the always seem to have really good villains. I would argue. I mean, I get a lot of the time in our society, we don't want to paint anybody as a villain because our society doesn't paint any doesn't have any sin, right? We've lost sin in our society because anything goes.
It's all perspective.
You can all do the most heinous things you want, and it's just perspective.
Well, isn't that what they said at
Yeah.
Star Wars convention? It's not about the dark side
Or the light side. It's about perspective.
It's about perspective.
Okay.
You missed the point of Star Wars.
You're missing the point of Star Wars, man. That's why Star Wars is a dying franchise. Audience, check us out on social media, Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Just look for the Sword in the Skull. If I had to say any last words on it, I'd say go see it. Yeah, it's a good film, and we should probably support original storytelling as much as we can. And in the meantime, keep reading, keep listening, keep watching, learn more. We'll see you, brother.
See ya.